Cherry Garcia was a flavor that was suggested to us by two deadheads. They said that we should name a flavor after Jerry Garcia, and they assured us that it would sell because dead paraphernalia always sold. And sure enough, they were right.
Former Ben & Jerry's CEO Fred Chico Lager today on Now I've Heard Everything. I'm Buell Thompson. A few years ago, two guys who were friends started a small business in an abandoned gas station in Burlington, Vermont. It was a small business, but these two guys then built it into what is now one of the world's best known and most popular brands. Their names were Ben and Jerry. They make ice cream. Perhaps you've heard of them. Well, one of their first customers in Burlington back in the day was a guy who owned a bar in town. And his name was Fred Lager. Everybody calls him Chico. And in 1982, Fred Chico Lager joined Ben and Jerry's as general manager and CFO. And it was in that role that he helped build the brand into what it is today. In 1988, they made Lager the president and CEO of Ben & Jerry's. In 1994, Lager wrote a book about his Ben & Jerry's experience. He called it Ben & Jerry's The Inside Scoop. It was part business book, part memoir, and a lot of social conscience. In just a moment, our conversation.
No, Sherman, this isn't the Wayback Machine, but it is a look back at an interview from the 30-year archive of national radio personality Bill Thompson. Enjoy.
So here now, from 1994, Fred Chico Lager.
I was looking at the subtitle, How Two Real Guys Built a Business with a Social Conscience and a Sense of Humor. And it occurred to me, as I was reading this book, there's plenty of both in here, but I'm wondering which, on a day-to-day basis, is the harder to maintain?
Probably a sense of humor, particularly as you get bigger, because you begin to get further and further removed from the people who are on the line making the ice cream. And that's a real good source of humor and joy within the workplace. But if you work at it, you can still create it. We have a Joy Gang at Ben & Jerry's, which does events such as Elvis Day, during which employees dressed up as various versions of Elvis. I came as the Las Vegas Elvis and only took second place to an employee who came as the give me some more mashed potatoes and gravy Elvis. She was very hippie.
It does not surprise me. It probably does not surprise you in the least that Ben & Jerry's is consistently listed in all the kinds of directories, the best businesses to work for, the best places to find a job.
Well, it's true, although, the reality of working at our company is not one of constant joy and nirvana. We're a company that went through a period of rapid growth, and the actual act of making ice cream is a physically challenging and physically demanding workplace. So, we do have that reputation, but in some ways the reality is not quite as golden as it's perceived to be, although we do aspire and work very hard at living up to that reputation.
Why did you write this book?
Well, it's a fascinating story, how these two guys started with $12,000 in cash and abandoned gas station in downtown Burlington, Vermont. Really no business experience. They learned how to make ice cream from a $5 correspondence course, splitting the tuition. They each threw in $2.50. And I was fortunate to see the startup of the business. I used to own a bar in Burlington, Vermont, so I saw the early days from a customer standpoint, and joined the business in 1982 and was a participant during its period of rapid growth. So the two individuals, Ben and Jerry, are characters. They lend themselves to great storytelling. There are these wonderful insider anecdotes in the book that really have never really been told, and I just thought it would make a really good read. Plus, it would be a book that people who are in business or who aspire to own their own business could really learn something.
Why was it not Jer and Benny's?
Well, they thought Benny's was something that Ben's mother would object to, so they decided to go with Ben and Jerry's, and as it turned out, Jerry became the president of the company because they had put Ben's name first when they named the business.
Will, which one is Jerry?
Jerry is the one without the beard. They're backwards on the book jacket, but they're right side right on the lids of ice cream.
You described that anecdote in the book, the White House when they received this.
They were the National Small Business of the Year award winners in 1978.
Kind of flummoxed our president, who didn't know which one was which.
The only line that he ever spoke to Ben and Jerry was, which one is Jerry? Which, when you think about it, is probably the second question that probably would have popped into most of our minds.
The first being,
which one is Ben?
But you're right, there's a lot of practical information in here for people who, and I think there's as much lesson in here for people who are in the bowels of some enormous, gigantic, multinational, multi-leveled corporation like Pillsbury, as there are with people who are starting up a small business that would eventually find itself going head-to-head with a Pillsbury.
I think that's true. The people who are in small business, I think, will find aspects of the story very inspiring. How the company overcame adversity in terms of raising cash, how it scraped by when it really didn't have much of a financial backing, how we competed directly with the Pillsburys of the world and the Krafts of the world, going head to head against these billion-dollar packaged goods companies, and really successfully competed against them.
What is the secret to making an ice cream that rises to the top of its field?
Well, the secret of making a great ice cream is really not a secret. I mean, it's decreasing the amount of air in the product. It's increasing the amount of cream, so it's heavier, denser, richer, and creamier. It's using, in our instance, large chunks of cookies and candy, although we have now introduced a line of smooth flavors that are unfettered by chunks for people, in Ben's words, who are just too tired to chew.
Or those folks like my dad would have loved this after he took his teeth out on Saturday night.
That's right. You can put it in a blender and drink it right down.
That's right. You got a great story in here about the Heath bars that were that wound up being stacked in somebody's office. Was it your office they were stacked in?
Well, there was only one office. Everybody shared it. There were 4 or 5 of us stuffed in, but we got a call from the Heath bar salesperson one day offering us Heath bars at 99 cents a pound, which to me was like a license to print money. It was a really good deal. And at the time, though, we didn't really have much excess cash to tie up in inventory, and we also didn't have much room to store a lot of ingredients far enough in advance. So we swallowed hard and we ordered 500 cases, and that was a huge, huge outlay for us at the time. And we scraped together the money. The interesting story was that we were in the process of building a freezer out behind our factory, and the expectation is that the freezer would be up and running before the Heath bars got there. But the Heath bars showed up before the freezer was built, and there was no place else to put them, so they stacked them floor to ceiling behind my desk, and I could not get into my desk. I had to slip in over the arms of my chair.
But coming back to the sense of humor, you maintain a degree of sense of humor about that situation.
Sure, we just made a little space for the copier and perched it right on a couple of cases of Heath bars.
Because it strikes me that you and Ben and Jerry know something that most of us need to be reminded of on a daily basis, and that is life is too serious to be taken seriously.
It's really true. One of the founding underlying themes of the business was a quote of Jerry's that was on a flyer that we put out when they did their first free cone day on the first anniversary at the gas station. And Jerry's quote was, "If it's not fun, why do it?" And that has been something that we've tried to live up to. As I said, we oftentimes get caught up, as everybody else does, in the nitty-gritty of running a business. Certainly, as it gets bigger, it becomes more challenging. But to whatever extent we can, we're looking for offbeat things to do and things to make it funky and weird and interesting.
But still, as you said, there are certain practical things about running any kind of business in this country, and I'm not sure that you could have fun and lawyers in the same sentence, but you've got to have lawyers to run a business.
You do have lawyers. We have good lawyers, and fortunately our lawyers share our sense of humor, or at least are willing to go along with some of our more offbeat schemes. When we had a scuffle with the Pillsbury Corporation, we retained excellent antitrust counsel, but we also launched our infamous What's the Doughboy Afraid Of campaign, which we kicked off by sending Jerry to Minneapolis to do a one-man picket in front of Pillsbury's world headquarters. And we did a number of offbeat things to bring attention to our plight. We had billboards in Boston. We had banners that were flown behind planes over Boston College football games. And our lawyer was very willing to let us, push that and go the extra mile, whereas some lawyers might have said, why don't you cool that? That'll just get you into trouble.
And millions of dollars in free publicity as a result.
Absolutely. It was really a windfall for the company. When we started having our problems with Pillsbury, we were a $4 million company. And a couple years later, by the time we finished, we were up to $20 million. So the publicity and the name recognition that we received as a result of the Pillsbury case was really invaluable. And what's really interesting about that is that that's an instance where we took a potential liability, an instance where our direct competitor, a multi-billion-dollar company, was trying to intimidate our distributors and disrupt our channels of distribution, and we were able to turn that into an asset, a PR promotional campaign that gave us millions of dollars worth of free publicity.
If you've ever wondered where to find the captivating books we discuss on Now I've Heard Everything, wonder no more.
Just tap the link in our show notes or visit our website, heardeverything.com.
Plus, when you purchase through our affiliate links, you're not only diving into great stories, but also supporting this podcast.
And we thank you for your support.
Now, how do you keep a company like Ben & Jerry's from eventually transmogrifying into the kind of company that would do to Tom and Billy's what Pillsbury tried to do to Ben & Jerry's?
Well, I think the values in terms of how the business is run come from the people who are running it. And Ben & Jerry are still very actively involved in the business, and as much as possible, we are trying to run the business in a way consistent with the values and the way in which the business has always been run, in terms of how it interacts with the community, in terms of how it interacts with its employees. It's certainly a challenge as you get bigger. There's no doubt that running a $140 million business that distributes its product nationally is much different than running a homemade ice cream parlor in the corner in Burlington, Vermont. But you can retain aspects of your values and your culture
back to my
if you work
1994
really hard at
conversation
it.
with Fred Chico
It
Lager.
did also occur to me for the bookstore browser who's looking at the jackets, and he says former CEO. I says, this isn't one of those kiss and tell. Now I'm going to tell you all the dirt on Ben & Jerry's, is it?
It isn't, although it's a very candid book, and it's kind of a warts and all story. It talks openly about some of the conflicts and some of the difficulties that the company has had. A lot of what the company, what has been written about the company has been, had a sort of PR gloss to it. And as I mentioned, there's difficult aspects and challenges that the business has faced. And, it's important that people know that it's not just a bowl of cherries, that there are pitfalls that we have fallen into. We've been involved in lawsuits and scrapes and stuff like that. And the book deals with those openly and honestly, and I think there's things to be learned from that as well.
You wouldn't be human beings if you didn't have conflicts from time to time.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, you wouldn't be a business in America if you weren't either a suer or a suee from time to time. If I've just coined some phrases there.
Suey is what they what they say to call the pigs, Bill. Suey?
Yeah, see, this is where the razor blade comes in. I can substitute a more rational and more sane question later on, and leave your very good answer into that inane question. What is maybe the silliest question you've ever been asked about one of your ice creams?
About one of the ice creams? Well, they often ask, who comes up with the flavors. And there's a whole bunch of there's virtually a story behind every flavor. Cherry Garcia was a flavor that was suggested to us by two deadheads by way of an anonymous postcard. And in the postcard, they said that we should name a flavor after Jerry Garcia, and they assured us that it would sell because dead paraphernalia always sold. And sure enough, they were right. And it's a funny story, but we were able to actually track them down. We put it out through the Grateful Dead fan magazine that we were looking for the people who had suggested the flavor. And sure enough, we got a letter from somebody saying, "Thanks for making it. I hear you're looking for me." And we still had the original postcard. We matched up the handwriting. We brought them into our annual shareholders meeting, and they were their pictures are in the book. They're prototypical Deadheads.
Now, Wavy Gravy strikes me as a terrific name for an ice cream.
Wavy Gravy was the announcer at Woodstock. And the interesting thing about Wavy Gravy, it's the first packaged food that's been put out in a tie-dyed package. And very colorful. And Wavy's an interesting character. He lives out in San Francisco, and he does a lot of work with kids. And part of the proceeds from the flavor are going towards his Camp Winter Rainbow.
How does Ben & Jerry's decide which social conscience or which causes? Because, once you start, whether you're an individual or a company, once you start giving away some money or being socially active, suddenly, boy, you got people all over you want a little piece of you.
It's true. Most of the donations that the company has been making go through a foundation, the Ben & Jerry's Foundation, which receives 7.5% of the company's pre-tax profits. And there's a separate foundation board. Various employees serve on that committee, and they review grant applications and decide where the money goes. Lately, we've been focusing in on kids as a main focal point for the campaign, and we've been working a lot with the Children's Defense Fund in their campaign.
You personally, I'm sure, like ice cream a lot.
I do like ice cream, and the interesting thing is when you work at Ben & Jerry's, you tend to not eat ice cream too much recreationally, because in the course of doing your job day to day, you're forced to eat ice cream.
So that did occur to me when I'm in the kitchen. If I make chocolate chip cookies in the kitchen, and I'll have one or two when they come out of the oven because they smell so good. But after a while, I just get kind of sick of chocolate chip cookies.
Well, I won't say that I ever got sick of the ice cream, because I never got sick of it. I was eating my fill, my daily requirement at work. From time to time, people would come into my office and say, taste these, tell me which one you like better, or, we're working on this new flavor, what do you think of this? So by the time you got home, typically you would have already eaten, 4 to 8 ounces worth of ice cream during the course of that day.
Why aren't you big as a balloon then?
Well, lately I've been eating mostly our frozen yogurts, which are lower in fat and which are really good for people who are a little more conscious of what they consume.
Now you can get your copy of Ben & Jerry's The Inside Scoop by Fred Chico Lager by tapping the link in our show notes, by clicking the link in the description below if you're watching this on YouTube, or by going to our website, heardeverything.com. We may earn an Amazon commission if you make a purchase. HeardEverything.com is where you can also find my 1994 conversation with another well-known entrepreneur of tasty treats, Famous Amos's Wally Amos.
I love selling cookies. I love eating them, making them. I love everything about chocolate chip cookies. There are millions of people that identify me in cookies. I've created a lot of goodwill. That goodwill didn't belong to Famous Amos. It belonged to Wally Amos.
And my 2011 interview with the sisters who started a chocolate shop that became legendary in Washington, D.C., Frances and Ginger Park.
Anything covered in chocolate works, even insects. We actually get requests for that. We haven't gone that far.
We'll never carry chocolate-covered insects. Never.
That would require sampling, and I don't think I'm up for that.
And of course, we post new episodes of Now I've Heard Everything every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you can find us every place you find podcasts. And thank you so much for listening. Next time on Now I've Heard Everything, it's the 50th anniversary of the fall of Saigon and the effective end of the war in Vietnam. So we'll revisit my 2002 conversation with the former premier, the former vice president of South Vietnam, Nguyen Cao Ky.
They call me flamboyant, controversial, lady killer. They call me butcher, warmonger, baby killer.
That's next time. Now I've Heard Everything. I'm Bill Thompson.